The snow did not so much fall as it materialized, crystallizing out of the frigid darkness to lay a silent, forgiving blanket over the northern quadrant of Frost Hollow Station. It was a gentle erasure, softening the hard edges of the utilitarian architecture, rounding the corners of prefabricated habitats, and turning the sprawling network of commerce districts and industrial zones into something out of an ancient, half-remembered dream. High above, the twin moons of Kelvari Prime, Luminaire and Umbror, hung in the deep violet of the evening sky. They were not merely celestial bodies tonight, they were watchers. Ancient, silent sentinels who had witnessed the birth of stars and now cast their patient, dual-toned light upon this small, brave outcropping of humanity. Frost Hollow was 43 years old. A mere heartbeat in cosmic terms, but a lifetime for the pioneers who had braved the 8-month, cryo-sleep journey from a fading Earth. They had come with hope sealed in their hearts and prefab structures in their cargo holds. They had built, they had endured, and they had raised children who knew the red dust of Mars or the blue oceans of Earth only as stories whispered by firelight. The older colonists, their faces etched with the memory of a different sun, still kept trinkets of that lost world. A pressed flower in a book, a tarnished coin, a flimsy, colorful postcard depicting a mythical scene called Christmas, where snow, real, soft, earth snow, fell on cozy villages and laughing families. Tonight, the Kelvari snow performed a miracle of mimicry, transforming the colony into one of those postcards, a ghost of a memory made real under an alien sky. Tobias Reinhold stood in the lee of Mechanical Bay 7, the cold a physical presence that seeped through the seams of his heavy work jacket. The breath left his lungs in small, determined clouds, each one a tiny ghost that lingered for a second before being snatched away by the wind. At 41, he carried his years not in lines on his face, but in the set of his shoulders, a permanent, slight slump of quiet endurance. His dark brown hair was kept practical, short on the sides, but his beard, usually neat, had grown unruly over weeks of overtime, a testament to his neglect of anything that wasn't a schematic or a diagnostic report. The jacket was a faded brown, lined with synthetic fur at the collar that scratched pleasantly against his jaw. Beneath it, the standard issue utility vest of a senior mechanic hugged his torso, its reinforced chest plating and softly glowing blue status indicators a part of his second skin. His pants were dark, durable, armored at the knees, and punctuated with a dozen pockets, each containing a specific tool, a specific solution to a specific, tangible problem. In his right hand, a diagnostic flashlight cast a pale, unwavering beam into the gathering dusk, a slender spear of reason in the encroaching, emotional twilight. Another long day, another in an endless, identical succession of them, each one measured in repaired hydro valves, calibrated atmospheric scrubbers, and signed-off maintenance logs. Tobias was the chief technical officer for the Western agricultural sector. It was good work, honest work, the kind of work that allowed a man to lay his head on the pillow at night and feel the solid weight of contribution. He kept the machinery of survival humming, the hydroponic bays that fed thousands, the air processors that kept them breathing, the transports that connected it all. He was a vital cog in the great, quiet engine of the colony. But lately, in these solitary moments between the clamor of the workday and the silence of his quarters, Tobias found himself adrift. Standing there, watching the snow perform its silent alchemy, feeling the vast, indifferent beauty of the twin moons, a hollow space within him seemed to echo. He wondered if honest work was truly enough. If contribution was the same thing as connection. If a life spent ensuring other people's survival could ever compensate for the quiet atrophy of one's own soul. Success, he was beginning to fear, was a splendid insulator, but a poor companion. His transport pod was late, caught in the predictable snarl of the shift-change rush. He could have waited inside the bay, where the air was thick with the smell of grease and ozone, and the coffee dispensers coughed out a bitter, brown liquid that at least promised warmth. But something, a restlessness, a yearning he couldn't name, had drawn him out here. Perhaps it was the snow, so reminiscent of those Earth stories he'd long since filed away as irrelevant. Perhaps it was the eerie, beautiful light of the moons, a light that seemed to ask questions he had no answers for. Or perhaps it was a simple, desperate need to feel something, even if that something was just the bite of the cold on his skin, a physical sensation to prove he was still capable of sensation at all. His gaze, unfocused and turned inward, swept across the pathway that connected the bay to the civilian transit hub. It was then, in the periphery of his vision, that he saw her. A small, still figure near the edge of the path, almost swallowed by the shadows of the snow-laden evergreens. The terraforming department had planted those trees decades ago, a psychological balm for a species evolved under canopies and open skies. A gesture of home for homesick hearts. At first, his engineer's mind registered the data points. Small stature, approximately 1.2 meters tall, bundled in outerwear. A human child, he assumed. A young girl, 6 or 7, waiting for a parent running late. A common enough sight, but his heart, sluggish from disuse, gave a single, hard thump. There was something in her stillness that was wrong. It wasn't the impatient fidgeting of a waiting child, it was the absolute, frozen stillness of profound distress. He looked again, and the first, casual assessment shattered. Her skin was the color of twilight, a soft, gentle lavender that seemed to hold its own light. Her hair, a cascade of silver lavender waves, framed a face that was at once utterly alien and heartbreakingly familiar. From beneath that silvery hair emerged 2 delicately pointed ears, their inner curves a shell-like pink that sent a sudden, unexpected lance of memory through Tobias. The feel of sun-warmed seashells on a beach in Cornwall, a memory from a childhood he thought he'd forgotten. And then he saw the wings. They emerged from beneath a hooded cloak of simple, gray-brown fabric, 2 small, graceful arcs of membrane and delicate bone, extending perhaps half a meter on either side. They were a darker hue than her skin, tinged with sunset orange and deep plum, and as they caught the ambient light from the bay's exterior lamps, they glowed like stained glass in a cathedral of solitude. A slender, purple tail, its tip twitching with a nervous, anxious rhythm, completed the picture. She was Kelvari, One of the indigenous people of this world, the first intelligent species humanity had encountered in its stumble through the stars. First contact had been a tense, fragile dance of fear and wonder, as such meetings always are. But the Kelvari had revealed themselves to be a peaceful, deeply spiritual people, their culture woven through with concepts of community and cosmic harmony. An uneasy, but functional, coexistence had been forged. Some Kelvari, like this child, lived and worked within the human colony. Others maintained their traditional dens in the vast, untamed wilderness the colonists had sworn to preserve. But all of that, the politics, the anthropology, the careful protocols, melted away in the face of this single, small fact: she was a child. A lost, frightened child. The expression on her face was a universal language that bypassed species and biology. It was the raw, unvarnished look of someone whose world has fractured, who is adrift in a suddenly terrifying and incomprehensible place. Tobias's training, his entire adult life, had been about assessing systems and solving problems. But in that moment, a deeper, older instinct took over. He moved slowly, deliberately making noise so as not to startle her. The Kelvari had hearing far superior to humans. She had likely been aware of him for minutes. He stopped a respectful distance away and lowered himself into a crouch, bringing his eyes level with hers, making his large, human frame smaller, less intimidating. The snow crunched softly under his boots. The sound seemed deafening in the hushed world. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low, gentle rumble, carefully modulated to convey safety. "Are you all right? Are you waiting for someone?" The little girl turned her head slowly. Her eyes, when they met his, were a breathtaking, luminous violet, pools of deep, intelligent sorrow. They were glistening, those eyes, holding back a tide of tears that threatened to spill over. Her lavender cheeks were flushed a deeper amethyst from the cold. Snowflakes had settled in her silver hair, each one a tiny, perfect star caught in a nebula of fear. "Sir," she whispered, and her voice was a small, trembling thing, a bell cracked with grief. "My mama dragon. She did not return to the den last night." The words struck Tobias with a physical force, knocking the air from his lungs. He was familiar enough with Kelvari culture to understand the profound significance of the term. Mama Dragon wasn't a childish pet name. It was a title of honor, of primal, nurturing strength. The heart of the family den. For this child to be here, alone, confessing this to a human stranger, it meant the unthinkable had happened. Her world had, indeed, fallen apart. He kept his expression calm, a mask of quiet competence over the sudden, frantic racing of his mind. "What is your name, sweetheart?" "Primrose," she answered, her small chin trembling. "Primrose Wind Feather. Hello, Primrose. My name is Tobias." He offered a small, reassuring smile. "Can you tell me what happened? When did you last see your mother?" The story tumbled out, punctuated by hitched breaths and the occasional, helpless twitch of her wings. "Yesterday morning, before the learning center. She said she would be home by evening meal, but she never came." Neighbor Worth watched me through the night. She said Mama probably just got delayed at her work. But Mama always calls. Always. Even when she has to work late. She always sends a message to tell me she loves me. Tobias felt a constriction in his chest, a tightness that had nothing to do with the cold. This small being had endured a night and a full day of this gnawing terror, clinging to the thin, fraying thread of an adult's hollow reassurance. She had gone to school, followed her routine, because that was what she was supposed to do. The sheer, devastating trust in that obedience, the vulnerability of it, was a weight he could barely stand. Primrose, did Neighbor Worth contact the security officers? Did she try to find out where your mother might be? A small, sad shake of her head set her silver hair shimmering. She said she tried calling Mama's work, but no one answered. She said sometimes grown-ups have emergencies and forget to send messages. Primrose's violet eyes locked onto his, filled with an absolute, unshakable conviction. But I know my mama would not forget me. Something must have happened. Something bad. That conviction, the pure, fierce faith in her mother's love, was like a spotlight on the shadows of Tobias's own childhood. His parents, pioneers of the first wave, had been dedicated, driven. They had provided, they had planned, they had built a future. But their emotional landscape had been as sparse and utilitarian as the colony's first habitats. He had been a project to be managed, a legacy to be secured. He could not recall a single instance of such certain, unwavering faith. The hollow space inside him ached in sympathy. Primrose, what kind of work does your mother do? She is a healer. A note of pride, fragile but real, entered her voice. She works at the medical center in the Eastern District. She helps people get better when they are sick or injured. She looked down at her mittened hands, then back up at him. She says that healing is the most important work there is, because every life matters. Human or Kelvari or anyone else. Your mother sounds like a remarkable person, Tobias said, and he meant it. The words felt inadequate. She is the best mama dragon in all the worlds. The declaration was simple, absolute. She reads me stories every night, and she makes the best spiced grains, and she always knows how to make me feel better when I am sad. Tobias had to look away, pretending to check a non-existent readout on his diagnostic tool. He needed a moment to compose himself, to push down the sudden, unexpected surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. When he turned back, his voice was steady, but something fundamental had shifted within him. A wall, long under silent siege, had developed its first, hairline crack. Primrose, what about your father? Is he at home? Her wings, which had been held in a slight, anxious tremble, drooped noticeably. It was a gesture of sorrow he had seen in adult Kelvari, a silent, physical manifestation of a wounded heart. Papa passed into the great sleep when I was very small. I do not remember him, but Mama says he was brave. He was a rescue pilot. He died helping others. Of course he did, Tobias thought, a wave of bitter sadness washing over him. This small family had already paid a terrible price to the universe's cruel arithmetic. They had given a father, a partner, to the cause of compassion. And now, it seemed, the universe was demanding more. The injustice of it was a cold, hard knot in his stomach. "Primrose," he asked gently, steering back to practicalities, to the one thing he could potentially fix. "When was the last time you actually saw your mother? Not a message, but saw her in person." "Yesterday morning," she whispered, the memory vivid in her eyes. "Before I went to the learning center. She hugged me at the door and told me to be good. She said she would make my favorite dinner when she got home." Her voice cracked on the last word. She was wearing her healer's uniform, the blue one with the silver marks on the shoulders. "And neighbor Worth, she has been taking care of you since then." "Yes, she is kind, but she had to go to her own work today. She told me to go to the learning center like normal. She said everything would be fine." Primrose's small hands clenched into fists at her sides. "But it is not fine. I waited all day, and Mama still has not come home, and no one will tell me anything." The picture was complete, and it was unbearable. A child, passed from one busy adult to another, her profound fear dismissed as childish worry, left to navigate a growing terror entirely on her own. The thought of this small, lavender girl trying to find her way through the maze of the colony, alone in a snowstorm, searching for a missing cornerstone of her world, was the final push Tobias needed. He made a decision. Not the kind of decision he made at work, based on data and efficiency reports. This was a decision of the heart, the kind that prioritizes a single, trembling soul over all the schedules and responsibilities in the world. He straightened up, his joints protesting the cold, and pulled his communicator from his belt. "Primrose, I'm going to help you find your mother." The statement was calm, definitive. "But first, we need to make sure you are safe and warm. It's very cold out here, and you should not be wandering around alone." "Where were you trying to go just now?" "I was going to walk home," she admitted, a fresh wave of fear in her eyes. "To see if Mama was there. But I am not sure I remember the way. We only moved to this district 2 months ago, and all the pathways look the same in the snow." That was it. The last shred of his hesitation vanished. "Primrose, I would like to help you. Would it be all right if I came with you? We can go to your home together and see if your mother is there. And if she is not, we will figure out where she is. Does that sound acceptable to you?" The little Kelvari girl studied his face with an intensity that was disarming. Her luminous violet eyes scanned his features, reading the lines around his eyes, the set of his mouth, searching for the truth that lay beneath the skin. It was a scrutiny that felt like it lasted for minutes, stripping away the layers of the chief technical officer and reaching for the man hiding within. Finally, she gave a slow, solemn nod. "Yes, you seem kind. You have good eyes." She paused, her head tilting. "Mama says you can tell if someone is trustworthy by their eyes." Another pause, then a shy addition. "Also, you did not look at my wings like they were strange." Most humans look at my wings like they are strange. The observation, so innocent and yet so perceptive, caught him off guard. Your wings are beautiful, Primrose, he said, and the words came out with a sincerity that surprised him. They remind me of the stained glass windows in the cathedral my grandmother used to take me to back on Earth. I always thought those windows were the most beautiful things in the world. A flicker of light, the first genuine emotion other than fear, illuminated her face. Mama says our wings are gifts from our ancestors, who flew between the stars before they chose to make Kelvari Prime their home. Your mother sounds like a very wise woman, Tobias said softly. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. He sent a quick message, canceling his pod request, then turned back to her. He hesitated for a second, then gently reached out his hand. Primrose looked at it, then up at his face, and placed her small, mittened hand in his. It was cool even through the fabric, a reminder of the different biology that separated them. But the trust in that simple gesture, the way her small fingers curled around his, transcended all of it. It was a connection, simple and profound, and it made Tobias feel more tethered to the living, breathing world than he had in a decade. They began to walk, their footsteps making twin tracks in the fresh snow. Primrose directed him toward the residential sector, a part of the colony Tobias, in his insulated routine, rarely visited. As they walked, he asked gentle questions, trying to build a clearer picture while keeping her mind occupied. Tell me more about your mother, Primrose. What is her name? Sarandel, she answered, the name spoken with reverence. Sarandel Windfeather. She chose our family name when she and Papa were bonded. Windfeather, because she said our family would always have the wind beneath our wings, even when times were difficult. That is a lovely name, Tobias said. And a lovely sentiment. Mama is the best. She works very hard at the medical center. She says that humans and Kelvari are not so different when they are hurting. That pain is the same in any language. Primrose's voice was gaining strength as she spoke of her mother. She helps everyone, no matter where they come from. It sounds like she has a very important job. She does. But she always makes time for me. Even when she's tired, she always reads me a story before sleep. Her expression faltered, dipping back into sadness. We are reading a book about a young dragon who goes on adventures across different worlds. Mama does all the voices. She looked up at Tobias, her eyes wide. Last night, neighbor Worth tried to read to me, but she does not know how to do the voices. The image was so specific, so poignant, that Tobias felt a lump form in his throat. The absence of a mother wasn't just about safety and sustenance. It was about the specific, irreplaceable cadence of a beloved voice, the unique performance of a bedtime story. I'm sure your mother will be able to read to you again soon, he said, his voice thick. Do you really think so? I really do. He squeezed her hand gently. But I need to ask you a few more questions, Primrose. It will help us figure out where she might be. All right, she said, her small face setting into an expression of serious cooperation. I will tell you everything I know. Good. Now, you said your mother works in the emergency healing ward. She was supposed to work a regular shift yesterday. Yes. She left early in the morning, before the first sun was fully up. She kissed me goodbye and said she would be home by evening meal. Primrose's brow furrowed in concentration. She did seem tired. She said she had not been sleeping well. But she said lots of people at the medical center were tired because there has been a lot of sickness going around. The cold season always makes people sick, she said. Tobias filed the information away. A healer, overworked, sleep-deprived, on the front lines of an outbreak. The possibilities were narrowing, and none of them were good, but at least they were possibilities. A problem to be solved. They turned onto a street of modest, interconnected residences, designed with higher ceilings and wider doorways for mixed-species families. Primrose led him to a unit painted a cheerful, defiant yellow, a splash of warmth against the monochrome landscape. "This is our home," she said, her voice growing small again, all the brief courage seeping away. She pointed a mittened finger. "The door with the blue decoration. Mama put that up when we first moved in. She said it would help us remember which one was ours." Tobias looked at the decoration. It was a pattern of interlocking circles in varying shades of blue, crafted from what looked like ceramic or polished stone. He recognized it as a traditional Kelvari symbol for family, belonging, and the unbroken cycle of life. It was slightly weathered, but placed with evident care and love. "That's a beautiful decoration," he said softly. "Shall we go inside and see if your mother is home?" Primrose nodded, her movements suddenly hesitant. She reached into a pocket of her cloak and pulled out a key on a woven cord she wore around her neck. "Mama gave me this for emergencies," she explained, her voice a whisper. "She said I should never go into the home alone if she is not there." "But this is an emergency, correct?" "Yes, sweetheart," Tobias said, his heart breaking for her. "This is definitely an emergency." She unlocked the door, and they stepped inside. The air was still and cool, the heating system having dialed down to an energy-saving mode in the prolonged absence of occupants. The residence was small, but it radiated a palpable sense of home. It was meticulously clean, but not sterile. The furniture was functional, but arranged for comfort, with soft blankets draped over chairs and bright, colorful cushions. Drawings, childish, vibrant depictions of flying creatures, twin-mooned planets, and smiling, multi-species families, were stuck to the refrigeration unit with magnetic fasteners. A vase on the small dining table held a spray of fresh, deep purple flowers, their color a perfect bridge between human and Kelvari aesthetics. But it was the photographs that held Tobias's attention. They covered nearly every surface, chronicling the life of a beautiful Kelvari woman with luminous lavender skin and flowing silver hair. In the earliest pictures, she held a tiny, bundled Primrose, her violet eyes shining with a love so fierce it seemed to leap from the image. In others, a handsome Kelvari male with darker, indigo skin and a confident smile stood beside them, his arm wrapped protectively around Sarandel. The family they had been. The life they had built before it was halved. "Mama." Primrose's voice, small and hopeful, echoed in the stillness. "Mama, are you home?" The silence that answered was absolute, heavy, and final. It was the silence of an empty nest, a den without its heart. Primrose's face crumpled. The fragile hope she had carried on their walk here shattered, and the fear came rushing back in a devastating wave. "She's not here," she whispered, her wings drooping until their tips brushed the floor. "She's not here, Mr. Tobias. Where is my mama? Where is she?" The tears came then, not as sobs, but as a quiet, hopeless weeping that was far worse. Tobias's own eyes stung. He knelt, ignoring the protest in his knees, and opened his arms. Primrose fell into them without hesitation, her small body shaking against his chest. He held her carefully, mindful of the delicate wings folded against her back, and let her cry. He felt the dampness of her tears seep through his jacket, a cold, wet testament to her grief. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just held her, a solid, human anchor in the storm of her fear. When the first, sharpest edge of her crying had passed, he spoke softly into her silver hair. "It's going to be all right, Primrose. We are going to find her. I promise. But first, let me make some calls." He stood, his body feeling old and heavy, and pulled out his communicator. His first call was to the Eastern District Medical Center. He navigated a frustrating labyrinth of automated menus and disinterested transfers, his patience wearing thin with each passing second. Finally, he was connected to an administrator whose voice carried the weary authority of someone who managed daily crises. "Mr. Reinhold," she said, after he had explained the situation with as much controlled urgency as he could muster. "I can confirm that Serendil Windfeather is one of our staff healers. She came in for her shift yesterday morning as scheduled." Tobias's grip tightened on the device. "And did she complete her shift? Did she leave?" There was a pause on the line, the sound of fingers tapping on a console, the rustle of digital pages being turned. "According to our logs," the administrator said, her tone shifting, becoming more personal, more concerned, Healer Windfeather collapsed during her midday meal break. She had been running a high fever and was severely dehydrated. She has been admitted as a patient here at the center. The relief that flooded through Tobias was so potent it was almost dizzying. He had to steady himself against the kitchen counter, his legs suddenly weak. "She's there, at the medical center. Is she conscious? Can she have visitors?" "She is stable," the woman reassured him. "It's a nasty viral infection that's been circulating, exacerbated by exhaustion. She's been quite agitated, actually. Asking about her daughter repeatedly. We've been trying to contact her listed emergency contact, a Mistress Worth, but we haven't been able to reach anyone all day." "That's the neighbor," Tobias explained, the pieces clicking into place. "She's been at work. That would explain it. You've left messages." "Several. No response." Tobias looked over at Primrose, who was watching him, her entire small being poised on a knife edge of hope and dread. I'm bringing her daughter to see her now. Primrose Wind Feather. Please, let Healer Wind Feather know that her daughter is safe and on her way. I will relay the message immediately, the administrator said, her voice warm with genuine relief. And Mr. Reinhold, thank you. Healer Wind Feather has been beside herself with worry. Knowing her daughter is safe, that will be the best medicine we could possibly give her. Tobias ended the call and took a deep, shuddering breath. He turned and knelt once more before Primrose, placing his hands on her small shoulders. Primrose, he said, making sure his smile reached his eyes. I found your mother. Her entire face transformed, the storm of grief parting to reveal a sunrise of pure, unadulterated relief. It was the most beautiful thing Tobias had ever seen. She's at the medical center where she works, he continued. She got sick yesterday. Very sick, and the other healers had to make her stay there so they could help her get better. But she is going to be all right. And she has been so worried about you, just like you've been worried about her. Is she really all right? Primrose asked, her voice trembling with a new, hopeful fear. Can we go see her? Can we go right now? Absolutely, Tobias said, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Right now, he arranged for a priority transport pod, and within 15 minutes, they were settled in the warm, humming interior of a vehicle gliding silently through the snow-blanketed streets. Primrose pressed herself against the window, her violet eyes wide, tracking their progress through the colony. She clutched a well-loved stuffed toy she had retrieved from her room, a fabric dragon, worn soft from countless hugs, its button eyes seeming to watch the world with perpetual calm. Is Mama really going to be all right? She asked for the third time, her need for reassurance a tangible force. Tobias didn't mind the repetition. She really is. She'll probably look very tired, and she might be hooked up to some machines to help her, but the healers say she's stable. That means the worst is over, and she's on her way to getting better. I should have known she was at the medical center, Primrose murmured, a small frown of self-reproach on her face. I should have thought of that. Tobias turned in his seat to look at her directly. Primrose, listen to me. You are 6 years old. You are not supposed to have to figure these things out on your own. That is what grown-ups are for. We're supposed to help. Sometimes we forget that. But that's our failure, not yours. She considered this, her luminous eyes searching his face. Are you a good grown-up, Mr. Tobias? The question, asked with such innocent, devastating directness, struck him to his core. It was the question he had been asking himself in the quiet, lonely hours for longer than he cared to admit. Was he? He was successful. He was responsible. He was competent. But was he good? When was the last time his actions had been guided purely by compassion, by the simple, uncalculated desire to alleviate another's suffering? He didn't have a ready answer. So he gave her the only honest one he had. I'm trying to be, he said, his voice low. Sometimes. I forget how. Primrose seemed to accept this with the profound wisdom of children. She reached across the seat and placed her small hand over his. Mama says that trying is the most important part. She says everyone makes mistakes, but the good people are the ones who keep trying to be better. The lump returned to Tobias's throat. Your mother is a very wise person, Primrose. I know, she said simply. She is the best mama dragon in all the worlds. They arrived at the medical center, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules that formed the primary hub of healing for the Eastern District. Tobias led Primrose through the stark, brightly lit corridors, following the directions he'd been given. The smell of antiseptic and the quiet, efficient bustle of medical staff were a world away from the silent, snowy magic outside. They found the room, its door slightly ajar. Through the gap, Tobias could see a Kelvari woman lying in a raised medical bed, surrounded by the soft, rhythmic beeps and glowing displays of monitoring equipment. Serendal Wind Feather. Even in illness, her beauty was undeniable, though it was a beauty under siege. Her lavender skin was pale, almost grayish, and deep shadows pooled beneath her closed eyes. An intravenous line was taped to her arm, and an oxygen sensor glowed softly on her finger. She looked fragile, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman in the photographs. But when her eyelids fluttered open and she saw Primrose standing in the doorway, a transformation occurred. It was as if someone had lit a lamp from within. Life and love flooded back into her features, burning away the pallor of sickness. Primrose, she breathed, the word a prayer, a sob, a homecoming. Oh, my precious one. Primrose. Mama. Primrose broke from Tobias's side and ran to the bed. Tobias moved quickly to help her, lifting her carefully so she could climb onto the mattress without disturbing the medical apparatus. Serendal's arms, weak but determined, wrapped around her daughter, and they clung to each other, both of them crying, a tangled mess of silver hair, lavender skin, and relieved, shuddering sobs. The sound was so raw, so private, that Tobias had to turn away, giving them this moment of reunion. Baby, I'm so sorry, Serendal was whispering, her voice choked with tears. I'm so sorry I couldn't call you. I tried, but I was so sick, I passed out. When I woke up, I was here, and no one could reach Worth, and I didn't know if you knew where I was. I kept trying to get up, to go home to you, but the healers wouldn't let me leave. It's all right, Mama, Primrose said, her small voice muffled against her mother's hospital gown. I was scared, but Mr. Tobias helped me. He found you. Serendal looked up then, her violet eyes, so like her daughter's, but layered with the weariness of adulthood and loss, finally focusing on Tobias. He saw a rapid cascade of emotions. Confusion, dawning comprehension, a flash of maternal protectiveness, and then, overwhelming everything else, a gratitude so profound it was humbling. Who are you? She asked, her arm tightening around Primrose. Tobias Reinhold, ma'am, he said, stepping forward. I found Primrose outside my workplace about an hour ago. She told me you hadn't come home. I couldn't just leave her there. I hope that was the right thing to do. Serendal's eyes filled with fresh tears. You helped her. You brought her here. She shook her head slowly, as if unable to process such a simple, kind act. Anyone would have done the same. No, Sarandel said, her voice gaining strength, firm with conviction. Anyone would not have. Most people would have walked right past. Or maybe contacted security and kept moving. You stopped. You took the time to actually help her. She pulled Primrose closer, her wings rustling weakly beneath the thin hospital gown. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough. No thanks necessary, ma'am, Tobias said, feeling strangely exposed. I'm just glad you're all right. Primrose was very worried about you. I was so worried about her, Sarandel whispered, her gaze dropping to her daughter's head. I kept trying to get up, to leave, to get home to her, but the healers said I had pneumonia, that I needed medication and rest. She looked back at Tobias, her expression pained. Worth was supposed to be watching you, Boo. She did watch me last night, Primrose explained, her face serious. But she had to go to her own work today, so she told me to go to the learning center. I went, but I was so scared, Mama. So after the learning center finished, I tried to walk home, but I got a little lost, and that's when Mr. Tobias found me. Sarandel closed her eyes, and Tobias could see her imagining the myriad of terrible possibilities, her daughter alone and frightened in the vastness of the colony. When she opened them again, she looked at Tobias with an intensity that seemed to see past his skin, past his bones, straight into the lonely man he had been just hours before. You saved her, she said, the words simple, absolute, and heavy with meaning. You saved my daughter. I just did what anyone with a conscience would do, he protested softly. But most people don't have a conscience anymore, she countered, her voice gaining a passionate edge. Not really. Not enough to stop, to get involved, to actually help. Her gaze was unwavering, and Tobias felt himself being truly seen for the first time in years. Do you have children, Mr. Reinhold? No, he said. No, I don't. Then you cannot fully understand what you did for me tonight, she said, fresh tears tracing silver paths down her lavender cheeks. You cannot know what it means to be lying here, helpless, terrified for your child, and then to have that child appear, safe and sound, because a stranger chose to be kind. She was crying in earnest now, the emotions of the past day breaking through her professional healer's composure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tobias felt his own eyes burn, the pressure of unshed tears a foreign, welcome sensation. You are very welcome. A healer, a human woman in her 50s with a calm, capable demeanor, appeared in the doorway. Healer Wind Feather, I see your daughter has arrived. Wonderful news. Can she stay? Sarandel asked, the desperation returning to her voice. Please, just for tonight. I cannot bear to be separated from her again. The healer looked uncertain, her professional protocols warring with her human compassion. Well, it's not exactly standard procedure. I will arrange it. The words were out of Tobias's mouth before he had even consciously formed the thought. He stood a little straighter, the authority of his position settling around him like a familiar cloak. Whatever is required, whatever accommodations need to be made. Primrose stays with her mother tonight. The healer looked at him, taking in his work clothes, his bearing, the quiet certainty in his voice. Are you family? He is the man who brought my daughter to me, Sarandel said, her voice firm, leaving no room for argument. That makes him family as far as I am concerned. The healer's face softened into a smile. All right, then, I'll see about getting a cot brought in. After she left, Sarandel looked at Tobias, her expression a mixture of gratitude and wonder. You don't have to do that. Arrange things. I mean, you've already done so much. I want to, he said, and the truth of it resonated through him. Please, let me help. Sarandel studied him, her head tilted in a gesture so like her daughter's. Why? She asked softly. And please don't say it's what anyone would do, because we have established that it is not. Why are you really doing this? The question hung in the air between them. Tobias could feel the old, familiar urge to retreat, to offer a polite, superficial answer that would allow him to maintain his distance and walk away unchanged. But looking at this woman, this strong, compassionate healer who had faced so much loss, who loved her daughter with a ferocity that was awe-inspiring, he found he didn't want to be that man anymore. The man who hid behind his job. The man who was afraid to feel. He took a slow breath, choosing his words with care. Because, he began, his voice low and rough with emotion, I spent the last 15 years building a career. And somewhere along the way, I forgot to build a life. I forgot what actually matters. He met her gaze, allowing her to see the truth of his confession. I buried myself in work because work was safe. Because work didn't require me to feel anything, or risk anything, or connect with anyone. And then your daughter stood in the snow outside my workplace and told me her mother was missing. He paused, the memory vivid. And I remembered. Sarandel's expression was soft, her eyes encouraging him to continue. Remembered what? That we are here to help each other. That success without compassion is just emptiness wearing an expensive jacket. That a life without connection, his voice wavered, is not really a life at all. He fell silent, surprised by the rawness of his own admission, by how much of his hidden self he had just laid bare before this woman he had only just met. Primrose gave me a gift tonight, he finished, his gaze shifting to the little girl, who was now nestled against her mother's side, listening quietly. Even if she doesn't realize it, she reminded me that I am capable of more than I've been allowing myself to be. Primrose looked up at him, her violet eyes clear and certain. You are a good grown-up, she stated, as if declaring a fundamental law of the universe. I was right about your eyes. Tobias had to laugh, even as he wiped at the corner of his own eye. Thank you, Primrose. That means more than you know. He stayed for another hour, until the cot was brought in and Primrose, exhausted by the emotional turmoil, had fallen into a deep sleep curled against her mother. Sarandel, too, finally allowing her body to rest, drifted off with one arm protectively around her daughter, a piece on her face that had been absent before. Both of them, finally, safe. Tobias spoke quietly with the healer on duty, ensuring all arrangements were solid and leaving his direct contact information with strict instructions to call him if Sarandel or Primrose needed anything at all. When he finally stepped out of the medical center and back into the snowy night, the world felt different. The air was just as cold, the snow just as deep, the twin moons just as distant. But Tobias felt different, lighter, as if a weight he had carried for years had been lifted. More present, his senses sharpened, taking in the crisp scent of the air, the intricate patterns of frost on the windows, the profound silence of the colony under its white blanket. He felt connected, a part of the tapestry of life, not just a spectator. He pulled out his communicator and called his second-in-command, Dorsey, a capable, if somewhat overly pragmatic, young engineer. Dorsey, I need you to clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. I have something I need to do. Sir, it's nearly 2200. Is everything all right? Dorsey's voice was laced with concern. Everything is fine, Tobias said, and he realized it was true. Better than it has been in years, actually. But I want you to set up a meeting with the colony's social services department. First thing. A meeting. Regarding what, sir? I want to create a program, Tobias said, the idea forming with perfect clarity as he spoke. Something that helps single parents in crisis. Emergency child care. Coordinated check-ins. Financial assistance for situations like medical leave, whatever they need. The colony has resources that aren't being used as effectively as they could be. There are gaps, Dorsey. We need to fill them. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sir, that's a significant undertaking. Not that I'm objecting, but it's not exactly in our department's mandate. No, Tobias agreed, a new certainty settling in his soul. It's not, but maybe our mandate needs to expand. Maybe we've been so focused on keeping the machines running that we forgot the machines are supposed to serve the people, not the other way around. He could almost hear Dorsey processing this paradigm shift. I see, the younger man said slowly. Then, with dawning enthusiasm, well, I think that sounds like an excellent idea, sir. I'll have the meeting arranged by morning. Thank you, Dorsey. And Dorsey, take some time off soon. Visit your family. Tell them you love them. He looked up at the moons, thinking of a small, lavender girl and her mother. Life is too short and too unpredictable to keep putting those things off. Another pause, softer this time. Thank you, sir. I will do that. Tobias ended the call and began to walk. He wasn't ready to return to the sterile quiet of his quarters, a space that had felt sufficient this morning but now seemed to be missing something essential. He needed to feel the snow on his face, to breathe the cold, clean air, to exist fully in this strange, miraculous night that had begun in mundane weariness and ended by cracking his world open. He thought of Sarandel, working herself to collapse while trying to raise a brilliant daughter alone, never complaining, never asking for help until it was forced upon her. He thought of Primrose, so brave and trusting, willing to reach out a small hand because her mother had taught her that kindness still existed. He thought of all the other silent struggles happening behind closed doors all across the colony, the quiet desperation that went unnoticed in the daily grind. And he thought of the man he had been just a few hours ago, walking out of Mechanical Bay 7, his mind full of efficiency reports and maintenance schedules, almost too preoccupied to see the small, lost dragon girl standing in the snow. That man felt like a stranger now, a ghost, a suit of armor he had been wearing for so long he'd forgotten the feel of his own skin underneath. Primrose had handed him the key. A small, lavender hand offered in trust. A pair of violet eyes that saw the good man hiding behind the competent official. A simple, devastating statement of need that had bypassed all his defenses. My mama dragon did not return to the den last night. Such a small thing, in the grand scheme of a colony, a world, a universe. A single child, a single mother, a simple problem with a straightforward solution. And yet, it had changed everything. It had reminded him that he was more than his title, more than his responsibilities, more than the sum of his professional accomplishments. He was a person capable of connection, and compassion, and perhaps, one day, love, if he would only have the courage to allow it. Tobias looked up at the twin moons, Luminaire and Umbra, their light painting the snow in shades of silver and blue. He smiled, a real, unforced smile that felt unfamiliar on his face, and yet, perfectly right. Tomorrow, he would visit Sarandel and Primrose. He would bring a book of adventure stories and read to the little girl, doing his best with the voices. He would check on Sarandel's recovery, make sure she had everything she needed. He would follow up on his program idea, start building a proposal that could truly make a difference for families like theirs. But tonight, he would walk. He would let the snow fall on his face and the cold seep into his bones, and he would let the silence of the winter night remind him that he was alive, that he was here, and that he still had time. All the time in the world, to become the man he was always meant to be. The colony continued its slow, steady rotation beneath the watchful moons. And somewhere in the eastern medical district, a small dragon girl slept peacefully in her mother's arms, dreaming of stars and adventures and the kind stranger with good eyes who had helped her find her way home. And Tobias Reinhold walked on through the snow, no longer lost, no longer empty, no longer alone. Just a man in a winter coat, his breath frosting in the air, taking the first, sure steps of a journey he should have started long ago. Grateful, beyond all words, for a little girl with purple wings who had reminded a lonely man what it meant to be human. Part 2. The Unfolding. The days that followed were a study in quiet transformation. Tobias visited the medical center whenever his responsibilities allowed. The first visits were brief, practical. He would bring a nutrient-rich broth for Sarandel, approved by the healers, or a new set of colored pencils and paper for Primrose. He would ask about Sarandel's vitals, her fever chart, her breathing. He would ask Primrose about her lessons, her drawings, her stuffed dragon, whom he learned was named Spark. He was, in those early days, a friendly, concerned presence, the man who had helped, now ensuring the help continued. But gradually, the visits lengthened. The conversations deepened, moving beyond health and logistics. He found himself telling Sarandel about the challenges of managing the agricultural sector's aging infrastructure, about his frustration with colonial bureaucracy. She, in turn, shared stories from the emergency ward, the small victories, the heartbreaking losses, the strange, dark humor that healers used to survive. They discovered a shared, dry wit, a similar way of seeing the absurdity in the midst of crisis. With Primrose, he simply played. He read her the adventure stories he had brought, his voice growing more confident with each character. He helped her with her drawings, his engineer's mind providing precise lines for spaceships while her imagination added swirling nebulae and friendly, multi-eyed aliens. He learned that the twitch of a Kelvari tail could indicate curiosity, that the rustle of wings could mean anything from excitement to anxiety, and that a soft, humming purr, almost below the range of human hearing, was the sound of pure, contented happiness. Sarandel was discharged after 5 days, still weak but strong enough to return home with strict orders to rest. Tobias arranged the transport and, before they arrived, had a colleague in logistics discreetly ensure their residence was stocked with easy-to-prepare meals, fresh fruit, and a new, extra soft blanket for the couch. He also tracked down neighbor Worth. The woman was mortified, her face pale with guilt when Tobias explained what had happened. I thought Sarandel had been held up, she stammered. I never imagined. I should have checked. I should have gone to the medical center myself. Tobias placed a calming hand on her shoulder. No one is blaming you, Mistress Worth, he said, and he meant it. We all get caught up. The system failed as much as any individual. I'm working on making sure that system gets fixed. He did, however, work with Sarandel to establish a more robust network of emergency contacts, including a few names from the medical center. And, after a moment of shared, unspoken agreement, his own. His program proposal, which he had tentatively named the Colony Family Support Initiative, found unexpected traction. It turned out he was not the only one who had noticed the gaps. Other department heads, a member of the Colony Council, even the director of the Kelvari Liaison Office, had been nursing similar concerns. Tobias's initiative, backed by his reputation for pragmatism and a newfound, compelling passion, became the catalyst that brought these scattered intentions into focused action. Within 2 weeks, the council had approved funding for a pilot program. Tobias was asked to chair the oversight committee, a responsibility he accepted not as a burden, but as a privilege. But the most profound changes were the invisible ones, the shifts in the landscape of his own soul. He began to notice the people around him not as functions, but as individuals carrying their own invisible burdens. He saw the exhaustion in the young technician's eyes and, instead of noting it as a potential performance issue, he quietly arranged for a more flexible schedule and connected the technician's family with a home care service for his ailing father. He made a point of learning the name of the elderly cleaning woman, Marta, and personally advocated for a long-overdue raise and a letter of commendation in her file. He sought out the Kelvari maintenance worker, a brilliant thinker named Kalin, and created a formal forum for him to present his atmospheric improvement ideas to the engineering board. It wasn't always successful. Bureaucracy was a slow-moving beast, and old habits died hard. But it felt right. It felt like leadership, true leadership, in a way his previous, detached management style never had. He was no longer just maintaining a system, he was nurturing a community. A month after the snowy night that changed everything, a formal, beautifully scripted message appeared on Tobias's personal communicator. It was from Sarandel. "Tobias," it read, "Primrose has been asking about you nearly every day. I would be honored if you would join us for dinner at our home tomorrow evening. It is a small, inadequate way to thank you for everything you have done. Please say you will come. Sarandel." His heart performed a strange, double beat. He felt a nervous anticipation he hadn't experienced since he was a young man. He arrived at the cheerful yellow residence precisely on time, holding a bottle of imported fruit wine and a carefully wrapped set of illustrated storybooks for Primrose, tales of explorers and artists, expanding on the themes of adventure she loved. Standing before the door with its blue, interlocking circle symbol, he was suddenly gripped by uncertainty. Was this overstepping? Was he intruding on their carefully rebuilt peace? The door swung open before he could ring the bell, and Primrose stood there, her face a beacon of joy that scattered all his doubts. "Mr. Tobias, you came. Mama said you were coming, but I was afraid you might forget." He knelt down to her level. "I would never forget a promise to you, Primrose." She grabbed his hand with her small, cool one and pulled him inside, her voice a happy torrent of news. Mama was much better, almost her old self. She had gone back to the learning center and told her entire class about the kind human who helped her. Her teacher had used it as an example in a lesson about community. Sarandel appeared from the kitchen area, and the sight of her made Tobias's breath catch. She was dressed in a simple, flowing dress of deep blue that made her lavender skin glow and her silver hair shine. She was no longer the pale, fragile patient, but the vibrant, beautiful woman from the photographs, her eyes warm and her smile genuine. "Tobias," she said, her voice like music. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." He held out his offerings. "I brought wine, and some books for Primrose." Books. Primrose immediately abandoned her role as hostess to investigate the gift. "Adventure stories. Mama. Look, there are pictures of deep space artists and everything." Sarandel laughed, a sound that filled the small home with light. "What do we say, little one?" "Thank you, Mr. Tobias. These are wonderful. You are very welcome." The dinner was a simple, delicious Kelvari dish, a savory grain stew with fragrant, alien herbs. Primrose dominated the conversation, a bright, sparkling presence between them. But in the quieter moments, Tobias found his eyes meeting Sarandel's across the table, and in those glances, a silent, deepening understanding passed between them. After dinner, Primrose, yawning but determined, insisted that Tobias read her one of the new stories. He complied, sitting on the edge of her bed while Sarandel leaned in the doorway, watching. He did his best with the voices, and while he was no match for Sarandel's performances, Primrose declared it very good, before her eyelids fluttered shut, her breathing evening out into the soft rhythm of sleep. Her wings were folded neatly against her back, the stuffed dragon Spark held securely in her arms. Tobias stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep, feeling that unfamiliar, warm expansion in his chest again. It was a feeling of profound peace, of rightness. She asked me if you could be her uncle. Sarandel's voice was soft beside him. He turned to look at her. In the dim light of the hallway, her violet eyes were deep pools of starlight. Among the Kelvari, she continued, family is not always defined by blood. We choose our relatives as much as we inherit them. It is a bond of the heart, not just biology. Tobias's throat was tight. What did you tell her? I told her I would ask you. Sarandel's lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. And if you said yes, then I suppose you would have to come to dinner more often. Uncle duties require a certain level of commitment. The warmth in his chest spread through his entire being. I think I could manage that. They stood together in the doorway, watching Primrose sleep, and Tobias knew, with a certainty that felt as solid as the colony's foundation, that this was what had been missing. Not just connection, but family. Not just purpose, but love. Not just a life, but a life shared with others who mattered, who cared, who would be there when the snow fell and the moons rose and the world outside grew cold. Sarandel, he said quietly, turning to face her fully. I know this is sudden. And I know we have only known each other a short time. But I want you to know that whatever happens between us, whatever form our connection takes, I am committed to being there for you and for Primrose. As a friend, as a colleague, as an honorary uncle, or as whatever else you might need me to be. Sarandel reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool, but the connection was electric. I know, she said simply. I could see it in your eyes that first night at the medical center. You have a good heart, Tobias Reinhold. You just forgot how to use it for a while. Your daughter reminded me. She has that effect on people. They walked back to the living area, and Sarandel poured 2 glasses of the fruit wine. They sat on the comfortable couch, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and talked. They spoke of their childhoods, his on a prefab earth on its last legs, hers in a traditional Kelvari den nestled in a crystalline forest. They spoke of their dreams, his, once focused solely on engineering marvels, now shifting toward building a legacy of compassion, hers, of raising a strong, happy daughter and healing the rifts between their species, one patient at a time. They spoke of the strange, wonderful courage it takes to open a heart that has been locked away for too long. At some point, the conversation drifted into a comfortable silence. They simply sat, watching the snow begin to fall again outside the window, the twin moons visible through a break in the clouds, their light painting the room in silver and shadow. I never expected any of this, Tobias murmured, his voice barely disturbing the quiet. I thought I knew what my life was going to be. I had it all planned out, all organized, all under control. And then a little girl with purple wings stood in the snow and asked me for help, and everything changed. Sarandel leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of such natural trust that it made his heart ache. Her wings rustled softly. "That is how it works," she said, her voice a soft hum. "Sometimes the universe has a way of sending us what we need, even when we do not know we need it." "Is that a Kelvari saying?" "No," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "That is a Sarandel saying. I made it up just now." Tobias laughed, a genuine, joyful sound that felt like coming home. "I like it." He paused, gathering his courage, then spoke the truth that had been blooming in his heart for weeks. "I like you, too." The words hung in the air between them, simple, honest, and full of infinite possibility. Sarandel lifted her head from his shoulder and turned to look at him. In her beautiful, alien, achingly familiar face, he saw his own hope reflected, amplified, and accepted. She smiled, and in that smile was everything he had been searching for without ever knowing the name of what he sought. Connection, belonging, a future that was not empty, not lonely, not defined by professional achievement, but built on the simple, solid foundation of love. "Then I suppose," Sarandel said softly, her hand finding his again, "we will have to see where this leads." Tobias smiled, his eyes never leaving hers. "I suppose we will." Outside, the snow continued to fall, laying a fresh, clean blanket over Frost Hollow Station, transforming it once again into a place of magic and promise. Inside, a human and a Kelvari sat together on a comfortable couch, their hands intertwined, their hearts open, their futures a beautiful, unwritten story. And in the next room, a small dragon girl dreamed of adventures across the stars, secure in the knowledge that her mama dragon was safe, her family was growing, and the universe was full of kind strangers who would always stop in the snow to help a child in need.